Hi, this is Bernie Borges, CMO of Vengreso and host of the Social Business Engine podcast. Welcome to this up-close series sponsored by SAP. In this podcast series, we examine the role of social selling at SAP. On each episode, I interview sales leaders from SAP around the globe. Each offers his or her unique perspective on the impact of social selling on their sales strategy, their sales culture, and the value of social selling to the customer. I had the privilege of interviewing 17 SAP professionals. Some interviews were with more than one at a time, and some interviews were conducted individually. Some were located in their office, and some out in the field, as you'll notice by the natural background activity. Now, we've integrated all these interviews into common topics covered across each episode. Additionally, we've produced a PDF companion piece to this podcast series in our Social Business Journal, Volume 11. We've compiled excerpts from all 5 podcast episodes and weaved them into a narrative explaining SAP's social selling strategy and success factors. The title of this journal is Savvy Social Selling the SAP Way, Best Practices that Win Customers. It's available ungated as a PDF download at vengreso.com/SAP. This page is linked up in our show notes page for each episode, which is also at vengreso.com. Now, before we get started with episode 1, we're going to begin this series with a story that explains the why of social selling at SAP. So let's hear from Michael Labate, the head of program development and operations for social selling at SAP.
I'd like to share a story that I think does a really good job at showing why selling behaviors need to change. An HR executive of a mid-sized company turns to her network a couple of months ago on LinkedIn for answers about how to solve a problem she was facing. This company was at the early stage of exploring new HR systems, and this person was interested in connecting with others who recently faced similar rollouts. What's so important about this story is that not one sales rep from any HR software company responded to this buying signal. Instead, her peers controlled the buying influence entirely. In fact, although one of them did refer to SAP, thankfully, there was other competitors also mentioned in that response. So what does this mean? Selling behaviors must change because customers aren't buying like they used to. Social selling is one of the big answers to that problem.
Well, clearly, Michael's story sets the stage for the entire 5-episode podcast series. So let's get started. On episode 1, you'll hear from Marc Havercroft, Enrico Palumbo, Shailendra Kumar, and Phil Lurie. The theme of episode 1 is social selling impact, why managers should encourage social selling. The modern buyer needs a modern seller. The B2B buyer is digitally engaged and hungry for content that empowers him or her during the buyer's journey. The modern seller must be a resource to the buyer to earn the opportunity to engage in conversation. How do you encourage the cultural shift that's needed to increase adoption of social selling at SAP so that your team is a resource to SAP's customers?
Okay, good morning, good evening. I'm Marc Havercroft. I'm the COO and Vice President of Strategy for SAP Success Factors. It's an interesting question, Bernie. I think the encouragement of the cultural shift needed across social selling, I think, is exactly that. It's a cultural change and a social change. So really how we encourage it and how I encourage it within our business is all around really looking at the world around you as an individual. So, talking to the individual person in the team and really understanding how they engage with this digital world around them. It's really, as you say in your opening title, a modern B2B buyer requires a modern B2B seller, and we are all digitally engaged when buying, and we look to find out reviews and information, etc. So I really encourage them to look at it from their own personal journey in a digital world as a consumer, and then reflect on how they would like a customer to be able to view them as a resource in that journey. It's insightful information, views on certain aspects within the marketplace, etc. So really start to become part of a network and a group of trusted advisors across the web and the different social mediums in advance of a person looking to buy and potentially go down that route. That's how we tend to encourage that cultural shift. And obviously then also what we do is that we very much highlight success, and we really do track things like share of voice down to the individual, and also from our customers, where we ask them, how has the social engagement and the digital engagement helped you in your buying journey, and was it helpful around our products and services, and did that assist you in making the right decision quickly and to the right outcome?
Excellent, Marc. So I'm gonna take a little chance here and ask you, what kind of feedback do you hear from customers when you ask them if the social journey was effective?
Well, I'll tell you what's really interesting, Bernie, is that we, as we all do in our own worlds, we concentrate on the B2B seller. But when you talk to the B2B buyer, they're sort of quite the same as the personalities and personas you have in your own businesses, right? Some still think the internet is an evil, wicked thing, and they don't look at it at all. And then on the other side of things, others find our hubs and our portals and our customer communities very, very helpful indeed, because they're used to getting that instant information through the digital world. So I honestly get both ends of the spectrum, but I tend to, again, when I look at outside of work and I look at friends and family and things like that, as we have people on each end of the spectrum when it comes to technology and social. So I get both ends, but what I'm really noticing of recent is a real change driven out of even procurement in large companies as well as small businesses, where they really do find the video content, the social content, the link, the information on product through to service, and more importantly, our customers' stories and how they've managed to use our technology. I'm finding really, really positive feedback on that.
How do you encourage the cultural shift needed to increase adoption of social selling at SAP so that your team is a resource to SAP's customers?
My name is Enrico Palumbo. I'm the HR Director of SAP Switzerland. As an HR Director, I meet the new hires on the first day, and this is where I tell them, as of now, you are an ambassador of SAP, not only when you meet customers or partners face-to-face, but also in your appearance in social media. So creating the awareness that how they appear in social media and how they act is then linking back to SAP as an organization.
When you meet new hires on the first day and you have that conversation, what kind of response do you hear from them?
Well, typically they are happy because they were looking forward to the first day. Sometimes they were not prepared to really on the first day have their social media account also changed. And by linking myself to them through the social media accounts, I also reiterate by connecting to them that they also should now adjust. And I'm sharing actively notes on LinkedIn and Twitter, so they also see me as a role model, I hope, in some extent, using social media.
How do you encourage a cultural shift beyond just technology, but a cultural shift needed to increase the adoption of social selling at SAP, specifically so that your team is a resource, a valuable resource to SAP customers?
My name is Shailendra, and I am the Vice President and Chief Evangelist for Analytics and Leonardo for APJ and Greater China. As I said, it is important to spread, it is a method to spread awareness, and it is a method or a way to communicate with our clients. And for our organization, it is important for them to be spending more time on the social platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, and communicate with the clients directly. Now, one thing which I've seen works very well is a very simple thing like birthdays. So you find people's birthdays, and people do provide their birthdays on these platforms, whether they're B2B platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, and you can get alerts to know when are the client's birthdays. And a very simple happy birthday makes a huge difference, because you are trying to communicate with the client in a very informal kind of a setting where it's not within the four walls, but you're still communicating with them. That way, there is a new communication or a new channel that is opened up for you. So it is important for us to communicate and make it more informal, and that informality actually leads to a very different shift in the mindset of not only the clients, but for us as well, to make it informal for our clients.
How do you encourage the culture shift that's needed to increase the adoption of social selling at SAP so that the SAP salesperson is a resource to the buyer?
I'm Phil Lurie, Vice President of Sales Technology at SAP. Traditionally, people buy from people that they trust. The goal today is the same as it's always been, to really become the person that is the trusted advisor. One of the ways of doing that through social media is to build your personal brand by publishing articles and knowing a lot about the area that your potential customer is interested in, concerned. The other area is that you need to be a good listener. And to do that, you need to be a good listener in order to understand what the customer's problems could be. When you put together the fact that you might be the expert in the field that the customer's problem might find its resolution, you've got the winning combination. So we're working on things that will help our people present themselves as industry experts, make them knowledgeable about our products and services, and then become good social listeners and provide them with tools to enable them to understand what the customer's problems would be.
I want to come back to the word cultural shift. What element of social selling requires a cultural shift?
The main cultural shift is the way you listen to the customer is a bit different, because you do a bit of research online using social media, social listening tools, whereas before you would try to engage the customer by a telephone call, an email, trying to buy them a dinner or a lunch. You might not have as much opportunity today as you might have in the past to do entertaining to get in front of a client. And the use of social media means that the customer has done a bit more research before they've even spoken to you, so you have to have more knowledge at your own fingertips. So the job of the seller has changed as the abilities of the buyer has changed, and we have to adapt to what the customer's or potential buyer's journey is. We need to be able to respond and adapt. So if the customer is online, we need to be providing good online resources. And you personally have to be online and visible. You want to show up on a Google search, for example. And in addition, if the buyer is expecting quick answers to his questions because he or she has already done the research, you need to have that information available readily at your fingertips so that you maintain your credibility as an expert.
All right, Marc. So how is it then that you transform people's mindset from the traditional sort of analog way of selling to the modern social digital way of selling?
I've got a funny term for this one, Bernie. I know it's late where you are and early where I am, but I call it my digital dance floor, okay? Right, and I'll explain what I'm talking about there. I guess we all can remember in our youth when there'd be one person who would jump up on the dance floor quite early and people would stand around looking and thinking, what on earth is that person doing? But then eventually, another person will join and another person will join, and then eventually, dance floor's full. I kind of approach that mindset piece around that because, as I said, again, if you look at digital, and I look at it beyond the sort of barriers of my working environment, because it's in everybody's lives in some way, shape, or form. So I tend to find, demanding people go on it and pushing them towards something is, it's kind of like, pushing a mule into something. It's people just dig their heels in. So what I tend to do is, first and foremost, the premise of just try it. It's out there. It's on 24/7. You don't have to be an expert to do it. Just try starting to share some information. We produce basic content and tweets and different things for our teams, particularly those who are, I guess, less comfortable with writing their own content and just putting things out there. So we give them what I call the crutches to start to run and walk on that side of things. But we encourage things like partnering up with, we have a core group who are very comfortable with it, and we make sure people partner up and help them with blogs or with commentary, and just really look for peer-to-peer, unstructured momentum to be created, and provide, tidbits of content and things where people can start to establish. What I really encourage is establish your own voice. This is not just around, republishing an analyst report about us, or republishing a sort of, dare I say it, staid sort of usual content. This is about getting your personal passion and conviction around the areas of what we do, and ultimately, our purpose at SAP Success Factors is to improve people's lives, and work's a big part of that. So, individually start to find your own voice, and partner up, and you can't do anything too bad. So don't put so much structure and rules around it. Let people find their own voice and make it peer-to-peer. And we tend to find that creates the right momentum and the right environment for people to try the new technology. And as I'm sure all of your listeners will know, once people get going, you'll be amazed how quickly people, go from a walk to a gallop, basically, on this stuff.
Yeah. No one's going to break the internet, no matter what they do. So
exactly right.
Enrico, as you know, there's a mindset shift that often is necessary for a sales professional to use social selling. So how do you transform people's mindset from the traditional analog way of selling to the modern social and digital selling?
Well, I think in many transformations, there are three key elements. One is create awareness. So we did already 2 years ago coffee corner sessions explaining what is social selling, why it is important, also sharing internally statistics on how many logins and site visits we have. The other is really the learning element, building skills so people know how to use it in an effective and professional way. And then the third element in the transformation journey, of course, is having also role models, leaders who are good examples and encourage their teams to follow. Depending on the role, probably even setting a goal or sharing with their teams their, for example, social selling index.
Okay, and you use the word journey, Enrico. So what are you seeing in the way of journey for most sales professionals at SAP? Is it a month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? You want to comment on that?
That's a very good question. I think people have different attitudes and experiences. So some are very fast. For some, they are more hesitant, also because it's a way of exposing themselves as experts. They might be more shy. So that's why I think it's important that leaders have the dialogue as part of the development conversation to understand what kind of support the individual needs. Is it more about how do I really use Twitter in an effective way, or is it more about which content can or should I select? And that will depend on how fast people adopt and complete this journey.
Describe ways to transform people's mindset from traditional analog to modern social digital selling.
So the world is changing, to be honest. Once upon a time, people used to use traditional methods to communicate with each other. But today, most of the work, most of the communication is done through social platforms like Facebook, like Twitter, like LinkedIn. And so people learn more and more from these platforms, from these communication methods. And it is important for all of our resources, or all of our employees to get together and try and engage with the clients so that we can educate them, spread awareness about our products, our services that we're offering, so they understand that the value that SAP brings to them through their software and services.
All right. Well, I know the training is a big part of what you do at SAP with salespeople and social selling. So what's the best way to maintain the momentum that people get after a training session on social selling?
Yeah, it's a tough one for us, because there's sort of 80,000 people worldwide as a company. So what we tend to do is we've very much localized our training and our social side of things. So for example, Ben, I spend a lot of time in Asia Pacific and China. Obviously, look, even the social mediums are different, and also cultural elements play a part. And I know that's the same for my colleagues in Europe, as it will be in North America as well. So what we tend to do with the training is we really do localize it. And we work a lot with what we call influencers in the marketplace, in our local marketplaces. That really helps us with, what people are saying, what's interesting, and also the local in-country nuances, not just from platform, but also culturally as well. In that framing of localized training and then localized influence, we, again, make it very unstructured and more information gathering. It's almost, the best way I could describe it is we give them new pieces of content or tools and get them to try it themselves within their own social communities. And again, we make the training very much focused on the individual. What's in it for you as an individual person, as an employee with us? We talk about personal brand. We talk about, our company's brand. We talk about, as you said at the beginning, is this helpful to our customers or our, hopefully soon to be customers? This is not about some old form of one post is going to bring you a customer. It's about creating a community, and it's about creating a personality and a persona in your marketplace that is trusted. Business is long term for us, so we look at developing those communities and those individual profiles. And we're open about the fact that there's two sides to the coin for this. As an individual, if you can have a profile and be seen as a trusted person in this area, that's good for you as a career. And as we move into new workforces, of total workforces and on-demand workforces, it's important for us all individually to understand our personal brand and how that works within the context of SAP, but how it also works in the context of our market and what we do. And just coming to your question, how do we maintain the momentum? Again, we really keep it local, and we go into very sort of small groups, really mixed groups of quite advanced social sellers through to we even have groups with extremely long careers at SAP, but are probably more limited on the social selling. So we also find a great benefit of keeping the momentum is having people who live and breathe social selling, with also pairing with colleagues who live and breathe what we do for 20, 30 years, but social selling is new. The other added benefit of that, we're finding a lot of implicit knowledge transfer that's happening between, I guess, our newer colleagues and our more mature colleagues when it comes to knowledge of SAP and just knowledge of the market and industries that they work in as well. So again, I find in this digital world, it's not about telling people and having rigidity. It's about giving them a framework and helping them develop their own personal persona within the context of product or industry or whichever sort of flavor they sit in within a company of 80,000 people.
Excellent. Well, Marc, we have covered a lot of ground on social selling best practices. Any closing thoughts in general? Any other thoughts you'd like to add before we close it out?
Yeah, Bernie, I think it's, I think it's really important for, I guess, companies and of all shapes and sizes that this digital stuff is a new level playing field for everybody. And I think a couple of things that, we would share and would like to share with everybody to learn is purpose is really important about your product or your service that you're doing, both to your employees, but also in the form of social selling. It really shapes your position and your message to the market. This isn't about putting product catalogs on. It's about how do you help a buyer make a decision and also, achieve an outcome. They're buying for a reason, not just to buy the technology. So, be cognizant of that. I'd also say that every seller is also a buyer. So the answers aren't a million miles away. Just think of yourself as an individual. And the third thing is, try it, have a go. I mean, from the smallest of tweets to the biggest of blogs, just take one step forward and you'll be amazed how maybe daunting it is at the beginning, but to how simple it is when you take those couple of steps. So just try it, work with communities, look at things. It's really not that difficult. So give it a go. Those would be my messages that I would hope that we could share and help others with, Bernie.
And what are you seeing in the way of best practices to maintain momentum among salespeople at SAP after they've gone through some training on social selling?
I think here the challenge is that really people practice it. And one thing we realized is a very powerful way to keep momentum is make it as a topic for reverse mentoring. So when we bring junior professionals with senior people together and we want them really to exchange and learn from each other, social selling and the usage of new media is almost always a topic where the more senior colleagues can learn from younger who are probably more biased and experienced in these media. And with that, we create momentum and examples that are encouraging for other users.
How common is the reverse mentoring approach in your region?
We're trying to promote it. We have, I think, a bigger footprint in the general mindset of mentoring. And we are now promoting it with some examples that we share across the organization, also explaining that it's a bidirectional activity where every generation can learn from the other.
And is that well received?
Yeah, it's well received because, like this example, it is we can identify a number of topics where people realize the value, and it's really something where each side is giving and taking something. And social media is a perfect example for that.
What would you say is the best way to maintain momentum among employees at social selling after they've been trained on social selling?
Keep writing content, get good content. It is available on our websites or our intranet websites or internal websites, which are shareable. Use the content, provide some value. So the client is looking for value from you. They're looking for being educated, get to know more about not only our products and services, but about other things which are related to our products and services. So we can find all that information and keep posting them on regular basis, so that the clients or people who are actually connected to you get that information and get some more knowledge out of it. And that way they see you as a valuable resource. And so I would suggest that most of us keep posting content which is found today and on regular basis, and also find content elsewhere on internet and post it so that you're not just a SAP resource, but you're providing them some value outside of the SAP resource, but with the content which is more relevant to our SAP services.
Enrico, is there anything else that you would like to say as a closing thought on the topic of why managers should encourage social selling at SAP?
I think it's important because people expand their sphere of knowledge, and also build a network outside of their normal area where they usually make touch points. That helps them to learn and get also different perspectives from these contexts they build outside of their own organization. That's why I see there's a big opportunity for not only organizational development, but also for the individual.
So can you elaborate on that last point? So it's a big opportunity for both the individual and for the organization.
Yeah, because if I do a post on the social media or a series of blogs, I get responses from people. So I learn from their responses, from the comments, potentially also get to know other people in other organizations I would have not known just going to a conference in my country or in my region. And from that, I can build on professional exchange that also is helping me in my individual development, understanding outside-in perspective on the services and solutions I'm bringing to the market, getting to know customers where I can build their perspective into what I'm doing every day.
Shailendra, I have one final question. And admittedly, it overlaps a little bit with everything we've just discussed. So feel free to respond to this any way that you'd like. What do you say to those who may be reluctant at SAP to adopt social selling?
Don't be reluctant. Just go there. Start communicating with others. This is one of the best mode of communication that we've seen in years. You can use it to your benefit by communicating with the clients, with your internal customers as well. As I say, communicate. that will make a huge difference. And there is a channel which is readily available for you to be able to utilize. So please do not hesitate and communicate with your clients.
This has been episode 1 of the Social Business Engine Up Close series, Savvy Social Selling the SAP Way. Best practices that win customers. Be sure to download Social Business Journal Volume 11, the companion piece that weaves together the narrative of social selling success factors at SAP. It's available for download ungated at vengreso.com/SAP. I'm Bernie Borges, CMO of Vengreso, and your host. Join me on episode 2, where we'll look at social selling best practices at SAP.